Morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people have been injured after the pickup truck drove into a large crowd on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead at the scene. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to avoid the area. President Joe Biden has released a statement following this morning's deadly attack. The US president spoke a short while ago while leaving on a flight from Delaware, refusing to give much away.
In the next hour or so, following what's going on in New Orleans. I'm not going to comment till I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says his administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as it investigates and recovers from the attack. Posting on Truth Social, the president-elect said, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in the country, it turned out to be true." In other news now, Sir Keir Starmer has hailed 2024 as a year of change as he shared his first New Year message as Prime Minister. Sir Keir declared that the UK will embark on a year of rebuilding and rediscovering the great nation we are in 2025.
Until you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you.
But the Conservatives have accused Labour of offering change for the worse, as Kemi Badenoch used her own New Year's message to warn that efforts to turn around Tory fortunes would be bumpy.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
Now, a major incident has been declared in Greater Manchester after flooding forced homes to be evacuated and closed train lines and roads following heavy rain. More than 100 flood warnings have been issued across the UK as rain continues to batter parts of the country on the first day of 2025. Greater Manchester Police said people became trapped in their homes without running water, while others were rescued from cars stranded in floodwaters. Meanwhile, a 3-day snow warning has been issued for almost all of England and parts of Scotland this weekend, as the Met Office has warned rural communities could become cut off. And to Scarborough now, where brave people have been ringing in the New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help those most in need in the Scarborough community. Thousands turned out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them away to the cold North Sea. Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley is on the beach in Scarborough.
New Year's Day dip in Scarborough, where 150 swimmers have taken to the North Sea. Here you may be able to see the crowds that have turned out. Hundreds of people have come to the beach here to encourage people to take the dip, and it's all about charity. It's something that's been arranged by the Scarborough Lions. They take a fee for people to enter that goes towards charity, and then many people here are raising money for charity through doing this New Year's Day dip. It's certainly attracted a lot of crowds. You can see some people here in the crowd in fancy dress. There's been a competition for the best dressed, and we can see people coming out of the water now who have taken part.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Darren.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, my friends, before we get to the regular show, I just wanted to do something more on the awful news coming to us from the United States of America. Now, US media have identified the suspect involved in ploughing into a crowd of people in New Orleans as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. Now, according to CNN, the attacker was carrying an ISIS flag. Now, 10 people were tragically killed and 35 injured after the vehicle rammed into the revellers celebrating New Year. The incident took place on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. That's a tourist destination. Reports suggest the man in question got out of his vehicle and opened fire, at which point the police fired back. Well, joining me to give us the latest on this is Steve Gill, a political commentator based in Nashville, Tennessee. Steve, thank you very much for your company. The latest there is pretty harrowing news, and President Trump has actually issued an intervention from his Truth social media platform.
Well, it's interesting that the clip you just aired from Joe Biden indicated that he had talked to the CIA and to the National Security Advisor, indicating that very early on they suspected that this was, in fact, a terror attack. New Orleans authorities just a moment ago are saying now that they suspect 4 to 5 others were involved in this. There are some media reports that he was wearing body armor, although so often we see the case when somebody's wearing tactical gear that it gets reported as body armor. The fact that the police shot him through the body armor indicates that it was probably just tactical gear. But a tragic day in New Orleans, and again, the news is still breaking in terms of the details of who this guy was, who he may have cooperated with. New Orleans authorities are saying he had an ISIS flag with him. Again, they're now saying that there were 4 to 5 other individuals involved. He's reportedly a former U.S. Army veteran, worked in some capacity in the military, not active combat, but in capacity as sort of a human relations, human resources guy. So there are details literally coming out as we're on the air.
Yeah, and Steve, I mean, I wonder to what extent the resurgence of the threat of ISIS, in the wake of what's going on in Syria, for example, that threat is still very much there across the Western world.
Well, and there are reports that this truck traversed, first of all, there were reports that it had come across the East Eagle Pass, Texas border a couple of days ago, and now is being reported that it was about a month ago. But the fact that we still in this country, as you all experience in England as well, open borders with no knowledge of who's coming in, what their purposes are and intent. We know that terrorists are coming into this country with nefarious intent, and we're going to see more and more of these kinds of attacks in this country until we, A, secure the border, and then target those who are here illegally and remove them, starting with those who are the criminal illegals who've committed atrocious violent acts in their countries or in ours.
Yes, I mean, Steve, to be honest with you, there was a sense of surprise when we read the name of the individual involved, because I'm afraid to say that this is just becoming the traditional script, right? I mean, we'll probably find out, Steve, in the hours to come that this individual had mental health issues. It's that sort of, we're so used to this now.
Well, and unfortunately, as the time lagged between when the police took down the shooter and they revealed his name, it was, hours until his name was revealed. As every minute goes by, it's less likely that he's some white Amish Trump supporter from Pennsylvania. And it's sad that the time delays lead you to recognize that there is a reason for the delay. And it's not because the military and the police are trying to give us the most information as quickly as they can confirm it.
Yeah, all right. Steve, thank you very much for that update. Honestly, it's a depressing note to start the new year, but I think it's a note that we need to be alive to, because we have undocumented people, fighting-age men, coming to this country as well, Steve, and I'm sure you sympathise just as much as with everything that's going on with you guys. So thank you very much, Steve. That's Steve Gill in Tennessee. I nearly said Texas there. Wrong state. Thank you very much. All right. Right. Now, returning to our regular programme, joining me until 7 is my panel. We've got Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media, and Benedict Spence, writer and political commentator. Now, Aaron, we'll start with you. I mean, going through what Keir Starmer had to say in his New Year's address from Downing Street, by the way, which was sort of a robot Starmer, and he admitted that many people are finding it hard to think about the future, but promised to fight for change. Have a watch of this. Oh, I can't hear it. Right. Well, the audio, I think, was a bit missing on that one, but probably for the best, my friends. Here's Kemi Badenoch.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
All right, so there's Kemi Badenoch's Christmas message, short but sweet, you might argue. The Reform leader Nigel Farage said that his party's focus on family, community and country included this.
I got back involved with politics, took the leadership of Reform UK, and I made one big promise. I said in that general election, albeit with 4 weeks to go, we'd get millions of votes and we'd establish a bridgehead in Parliament. Well, that is what we have done. And I think everybody acknowledges that with just a handful of MPs, we've made a real impact over the course of these last 6 months. And everything we do is based on values. And those values are around the things that matter to us: family, community and country. They're the things that got me back in politics.
And that's from Blenheim Palace, beautiful backdrop. But for the for fairness here, Stephen's messaging, so glad Starmer was muted then. I do have to be fair, we will play Sir Keir Starmer.
For many people, it's hard to think about the future when you spend all of your time fighting to get through the week. So I want to be clear, until you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government.
All right. Aaron, come on. You must admit that that was not inspiring at all, was it?
No, I would just say, actually, purely on the visuals.
Yes.
Allow me to be incredibly banal.
Let's go on the aesthetics.
Let's just, Dominic Cummings had that great line, then he said, turn the volume off and what do you think? And that's actually how most people could consume a lot of news media. Looking at that, I think Labour and the Tories should be terrified, because if you didn't know who these politicians were, if you were just an alien from outer space and you're looking at those three things, and you were told one of these people is the leader of a country, you'd think it's Nigel Farage. You look at Starmer there a moment ago, very poorly lit, cramped, indoors, he looks alienated from the country. Farage is beautifully lit, it's actually a very well-made video, great backlighting, great backdrop, you're making a statement, like you say, Blenheim Palace, home of the Marlborough family, including Winston Churchill. That is a real statement of intent. And look, we've had new parties arrive in British politics that do quite well, the SDP in the 1980s, the Greens, UKIP. This is a very different beast. And I think the best thing you can say for Keir Starmer is that Kemi Badenoch is also not particularly inspiring. She uses that word project. I think of Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United. You're going nowhere fast.
That went well. Yeah, Benedict, come on. Which one caught your fancy if you had to choose?
Yeah, it was clearly Farage. I mean, quite aside from the production values, the fact that he was wearing a suit with his tie done up was a really good start.
Well, to be fair to Kemi.
I mean, no, the leader of the Conservative Party wearing a bright red dress. I mean, come on, like really basic things like this. Just turn up like you look like you want to be the leader of the country. That would have been a fantastic start. Keir Starmer is a good 20 years behind the rest of the country. They clearly still think they're sort of stuck in the Blair open collar sort of era, and where everything's very casual, even though it's the middle of winter. Nobody's buying that.
Do you not think there is, because a lot of the criticism around Kemi Badenoch is that she's been missing from the battlefield. Do you think actually this approach of a sort of a submariner is actually, it's laudable because she's coming up and devising policy?
Like a sort of a German U-boat strategy. She's just going to turn up and sink you from nowhere.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to sink somebody at some point for that to actually work. I think she's very evasive, because I think the Conservative Party doesn't actually know what it stands for yet. It doesn't know what its audience is going to be going forward. It doesn't know where, I think, Reform is going to mainly sort of concentrate its fire, whether or not it's going to try to kill off the Tories at this general election, or it's going to sort of focus more on going after Labour, or sort of a combination of all of these things. And it's also very cautious, because if you offer any kind of policy as a Conservative leader at the moment, Labour can very easily, or the Reform can very easily turn around and go, that sounds nice, why didn't you do that over the last 14 or so years? So I think Kemi, to be fair to her, is in a very difficult difficult position where most people, even though she wasn't actually in charge of the country, would go, we just don't buy what you're selling.
I mean, Aaron, if Reform really are looking prime ministerial with Nigel at the helm, are we going to be seeing Novara media reports on how Britain is a country of hate or something, are we?
Watch this space, as Kevin Bowden... I'll respond to that. I think the point is for Farage, and I know it upsets lots of people on the radical right, is that he is tending to the centre quite a lot, actually. Not necessarily in rhetoric all the time, sometimes, but often in some of the policies he's talking about, actually.
But I think that's what we're doing here at GB News, but you fellas, you disagree with that.
There you go. Well, no, so for instance, he thinks that nurses shouldn't have to pay student fees, their debt should be scrapped. He talked about, actually, the two-child benefit cap with regards to universal credit, etc. Should get rid of that. That is stuff that actually, you know, you'd get agreement from Jeremy Corbyn on the left of the Labour Party.
But Braverman agrees with those positions.
Yeah, well, so that's what's really interesting about this particular moment, is that, and it's going to be a real challenge for the left. Farage is a very smart man. He knows he cannot be this insurgent figure on the radical right if he wants to become, who knows, Prime Minister, in a cabinet, leading a government of some kind. He knows he's got to get country-file Conservatives and a few Labour voters too. That's a big, big challenge.
Well, I think the Labour voters are more likely, actually, because I speak to everyone in the Red Wall. Well, not everyone in the Red Wall, but
you have been very busy,
exclusively in the Red Wall, almost. And what they say to me, Benedict, is, look, I'm not political at all, but I tell you what, Farage all the way.
Nigel Farage is a fantastic campaigner. That's not news to anybody. What I worry about with Reform is it's still in its embryonic stage. It could go in multiple different directions. And we actually saw this with both UKIP and the Brexit Party, is that a lack of professionalism can really do it a great disservice. And also, if you're campaigning on one thing, say immigration, you can get a lot done, but that's not a large enough policy platform to actually enter office, and other parties will start to nick stuff from you. There needs to be more in terms of a policy platform. We're still a long way away from the next general election, obviously, but it needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and it needs to be recognisable as a reform policy beyond. And you know, they will say that we've already come out with this stuff, but actually most people know they don't like migration on the scale that it currently is, small boats in particular, and they'd like us to pay less tax. It needs to be more than that. And the other thing is the professionalisation of the party. Right now, it's just Farage. Tice is good, Rupert Lowe's good. Beyond that, there's not really enough there to go, yes, I trust these people to run a government.
Before May, that's the key test. All right, Benedict, thank you very much, and Aaron there as well. Now, coming up, did right-wing rhetoric around migration stoke the summer riots? The chair of the Equalities Committee certainly thinks so. We'll discuss that after this.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, it's interesting because I haven't actually been told specifically what I've done, which has resulted in me being removed from my committee position, which was head of daytime. I started a podcast in September in which I interviewed Charlie Bentley-Astor, who's a detransitioner. I then also interviewed Graham Linehan, and I wrote an article for his Substack. And shortly after that, I was told that I had been suspended, and the university union started an investigation into me, and that very quickly became apparent to me that it was an interrogation of my gender-critical views rather than any sort of misconduct that I had been alleged to.
Right. And Graham Linehan has been outspoken on issues relating to transgender ism, whatever you want to call it, gender ideology. And so perhaps just by having associated yourself with him as a controversial figure, that was why the investigation happened, you suspect?
Yes, and already it's quite clear that guilt by association is a crime that you can commit within university societies. I actually purchased my free speech union membership way before this all happened, when a friend helped me edit the episode with Charlie, and he got in trouble with a separate society who told him that he must disassociate himself from me, and if he didn't, further measures would be taken. So at that point, I thought, well, I better put some damage control in place and purchase my membership in case anything happens to me.
So this decision is made by the student union, right? Is that made up of fellow students? Or who's making this call?
Well, that's actually part of my appeal. So the process has been completely improper. They haven't followed their own guidelines. There are 2 different guidelines as to whether a complaint is dealt with the society itself, so Leeds Student Radio, or the union, and it's basically been a mishmash of both. So it's been an improper procedure, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's the student union who's decided to remove me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Darren Grimes, in for Michelle Dewberry. Now, Rowena's just messaged in saying, watching your political topic, my husband just said, why does it have to be left or right? What's wrong with common sense? What a very intelligent comment. Yes, I agree, Rowena. And Mark says, Reform are very often accused of being a right-wing party to the right of the Conservatives. In actual fact, some of Reform's policies would not be considered right-wing at all and would fit in with what would have traditionally been considered a Labour platform. I think Reform takes a pragmatic view that will appeal to both Conservative voters and Labour voters. I agree, Mark, and I think actually you might find that Aaron Bastani very soon becomes one of the 160,000 I'm looking for members of the Reform Party.
I was going to say, was that Nigel Farage? That's exactly the sort of thing they want to hear, isn't it?
All right. Now, the Conservative government's focus on small boats crossings and delays and asylum claims played a role in stoking August UK riots. That's not my words. They're the words of the chair of the Commons Equalities Committee. Her comments come as the official figures from 2024 show illegal immigration numbers are up almost a third, and the total number of small boat arrivals has topped 150,000 since 2018. So does she have a right, or are people justifiably angry that migration simply isn't under control? Aaron Bastani and Benedict Spence still join me now. Benedict, I'll start with you this time round. Do you think actually there's any justifiable rhetoric to say that this was all stoked up by those who are anti-immigration? But I read that actually there were a load of foreign nationals who were tweeting up the fake news.
I mean, is it right-wing to point out that there's a lot of migration in this country and that might cause issues? I mean, you know, if you're just going to look at it on a sort of a purely practical level, if you don't have the level of investment in this country that we've needed for some time, and you're importing large amounts of people in at the same time, and you're not keeping pace, therefore, with services or with infrastructure, is that necessarily a right-wing thing to point out, especially if that's going to affect many of the poorest people in society? I would have thought that that could be as equally left or right. I suppose where people would say it is right-wing is going to come from that idea of, I suppose, a sort of an ethno-nationalist sort of sense of what Britain should be, which I really do think is very much a small minority in this country. I don't think it is quite as large as The Guardian would like it to be. But it will get bigger if you continue to just ignore people's complaints about these things. And broadly speaking, I think Fraser Nelson's been writing about this. I think he wrote about this possibly in his last Telegraph column, about how Britain is, relatively speaking, a success story when it comes to integration. Now, there are plenty that would dispute that, and I think that he was rather, well, this is the thing, he was, I think, not entirely accurate, rather sweeping, but, columns can be rather sweeping. But it's certainly not the worst place.
Said a similar thing.
It's certainly not the worst place in terms of integration in Europe. So is it, something driven entirely by right-wing people? No, I don't. I think that there are genuine concerns that a lot of ordinary people from across the political spectrum have, and I think it does a disservice to the debate that it is the default response to just go, well, that's right-wing, therefore we can put it in a box.
Shut it down, exactly. Aaron, I mean, you, I think, like to be open-minded. Are you open-minded to the idea that it's not a left-right issue?
Well, I think that's certainly true, that if you don't have enough infrastructure, new homes, and you have, this is now legal migration, net migration of circa 1 million people in 1 year, then that is absolutely going to create problems. You can be pro-immigration, anti, whatever, doesn't matter. It's going to create problems with regards to certain public services, like healthcare, housing, etc. On this particular story, so for instance, it's gone up again with regards to undocumented migration in 2024, on 2023. The highest year was 2022, it was about 45,000 people across the channel. And correct me if I'm wrong, that was also the year of the 900,000 to 1 million net migration. Yeah. The average Conservative voter cares about migration, right? That's just a fact, it's an observation. How on earth did they get 24% in the last election? Almost 1 million net migration, 45,000 people in 2022 crossing the channel.
Yeah, it's a betrayal.
Well, I just don't understand how you can be a Conservative voter who cares about that stuff. Again, I'm just trying to be, a political commentator, being, objective, and then go and vote for them. It's like being a socialist. You want public ownership. A Labour government comes in, they're promising all of that, and then they privatise loads of stuff, and they're expecting you to still vote for them. I don't think any sensible person would. So, like I say, I'm kind of surprised the Tories kept so many votes at the last time of asking. I suppose the big question is, does that feed through to 2029? Could it go lower, is the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, it could go lower. And I think that's, reform, I think, came out of nowhere, really, and it's a lack of brand recognition as much as anything that I think that held them back. In many ways, actually, you could say that they probably should have done, as you say, slightly better. And people also don't really trust Labour on the issue of migration. They blame, I think, Tony Blair for opening those floodgates.
Do you remember Ed Miliband's controls on immigration mug?
Yeah, I do. Strangely, amongst the few things that I do remember of Ed Miliband. It's, this is, again, though, it's to go back to what we were saying in the last segment about Kemi's complete lack of actual position on anything. I don't think the Conservative Party really knows what it stands for, what it wants to appeal to. Because you're right, there is a disconnect at the heart of the Conservative Party, which is it's supposed to be very pro-free market. But how do you then square that with millions of people who are furious at the, frankly, rather pro-free market policy of opening the floodgates to anybody who wants to come and work here? Those two things aren't compatible, where you go, yes, we're absolutely driven towards competition, but we are going to exclude millions of people to come here and potentially, compete and drive wages lower. So how does the Conservative Party square that? But also, frankly, how does Reform square that? Well, because Reform is very much pro-free market party, but it's very anti-migration as well. It's a difficult circle to square.
Well, they would argue that, they're pro the nationalisation of British Steel, for example, right? So they would argue that there is a lot of their platform which isn't a...
So they'd nationalise British Steel and then bring in lots of workers from overseas to work at very low wages to staff it.
That. But we shall see. We'll put that question to them very soon indeed. All right, Benedict, thank you very much, and Aaron there as well. Coming up, just why has no one been held accountable for the Rotherham abuse scandal? Find out after this.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Things are looking much colder now across the UK over the next few days. There'll be plenty of sunshine around during the day, but also lots of frost and ice around during the overnight periods. Wintry showers in places too. Low pressure starting to pull away to the east of the UK now. That's allowing a cold northerly airstream to become established, and that's set to dominate the weather across the UK over the next few days. So overnight tonight, the last of the rain clears from the far southeast fairly promptly. Showers ease across the central slice of the UK, but showers continue across the north and northwest in that northwesterly airstream. And wherever you are, it's set to turn very chilly overnight, and widespread frost forming, even in towns and cities, with some icy patches certainly across the north of the UK. As for Thursday, well, plenty of sunshine around, certainly across the inland areas. Still showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream. So showers continue across the north of Scotland during the first part of Thursday, a mixture of sleet, snow, some hail in places as well. A few showers pushing into Northern Ireland, but across the bulk of southern Scotland, northern England, and much of England and Wales. It's set fair, plenty of sunshine, but it will be a very cold start, as I say, with some frost and some ice in places too. As we go through the day, those showers start to feed down from the north and northwest. So many areas exposed to that north to northwesterly airstream will see some showers at times. And wherever you are, despite the sunshine elsewhere, it's going to be a cold day, feeling even colder in that north to northwesterly wind. Temperatures at the very best up to 6 or 7 Celsius down towards the south and southwest. 6 or 7 in the southwest there is in the low 40s in Fahrenheit, but feeling closer to or just below freezing in that brisk wind. As for Friday, well, lots of showers feeding in from the north and northwest. Again, they'll be wintry for many areas and a frosty start, and temperatures again struggling with those showers, if anything, becoming more widespread as we go into the weekend. Areas of rain and snow moving in from the southwest as we go through Saturday and Sunday. Can well give some disruption in places, so do keep tuned to the forecast if you can. I'll see you soon. Take care for now. Speak soon. Bye-bye for now.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Darren Grimes, in for Michelle. Keeping me company until 7 o'clock, Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media, and Benedict Spence, writer and political commentator. I've just had a message in from Patrick, not that one, a different Patrick, and he says, Darren, the Rotherham scandal means the police, MPs and local authorities should be doing time. It's that simple. That's one of your views there. Now, Elon Musk has also waded in to the Rotherham grooming scandal. He tweeted this: "So many people at all levels of power in the United Kingdom need to be in prison for this." Now, those comments refer to the damning Alexis J report from 2014, an extract of which, if you're watching on your televisions, you can see in that screenshot there. That's from back in 2014, and it exposed one of the most shameful chapters in modern British history. Around 1,400 children, were abused over a 16-year period in Rotherham. In fact, it's still going on in the country today. These kids, some as young as 11, endured unimaginable horror, rape, trafficking and violent threats. To call it a grooming gang, I think, underplays the severity of it. So what did much of the authorities do? Well, nothing. They turned a blind eye, they ignored the warnings, and they left these victims to fend for themselves. This has led to Robert Jenrick and Rupert Lowe joining calls for prosecutions of those involved in covering it up, and our very own Charlie Peters has said that this is the year that those senior officials finally face justice. So why has it taken so long to expose this as the disgrace that it absolutely is? Well, I'm delighted to say that Charlie joins me now to answer that very question. Charlie, Happy New Year, first of all. You've been going viral on X today. I wonder if you might set out why it is you think that politicians are putting their head above the parapet now on this.
Well, Darren, the silence is finally breaking, because for so long on this national scandal, that's what so many survivors have had to endure. Silence. People not paying attention to this crisis. People not coming forward with solutions, people preferring this problem to just go away. But as we're seeing now with some of the commentary online, it won't go away. And some politicians, I think, have now seen that this is a scandal that needs to be tackled head on. And what has been going on in this country for well over a decade, which is to admit that things have been appalling, but then do nothing to fix it, can no longer continue. Now, I think we had one major intervention on this, which was 2 years ago when Suella Braverman launched her grooming gangs task force. Now, she did that after a GB News campaign exposed the ongoing extent of this crisis. Now, we were very proud as a channel when that task force announced in May of last year that it had made over 500 arrests in its first year, a national crime agency-led operation, over 500 arrests. That should show, I think, very clearly that this is still a national ongoing crisis. But the problem, Darren, that Rupert Lowe is talking about and Robert Jenrick are talking about today isn't just about criminal justice against perpetrators, but also public sector officials who have failed. Now, again, on this channel, we have championed the cause of, quite frankly, going after those who failed, and several councillors and politicians have lost their jobs as a consequence of GB News investigations into the grooming gang scandal. But frankly, that's not enough. There are many more, as it were, jobs that need to be lost and names that need to be shamed. And I think that should be an intent that we have going into this year, because as you're seeing, Darren, the attention is there, the demand for action is there. We've had politicians calling for policies, but frankly, we need a lot more journalism, which I hope I will be doing, and I hope the channel will be doing this year on this national atrocity, as much as it is a scandal, to ensure that people who do fail in these positions are not afforded just an opportunity to take a pension and to disappear quietly after letting people down in the most appalling fashion. I've been working on a few names to reveal later this year, which I will be doing for quite a long time now. As you know, Darren, this story, this scandal has taken up the bulk of my career.
Yes.
But frankly, it's overdue, and so I'm glad and I welcome all of this attention that we're seeing on the issue at the moment, and I look forward to more politicians and more voices speaking up and bringing forward their ideas, because, as I said, when Suella Braverman came out with that intervention, she was roundly criticised and hounded by the media for making what I would term as quite an accurate representation of the issue, using the reporting that we put together on the channel. So yes, much more to be done and more names to be shamed.
Exactly, yeah. She was dismissed as a bigot and all these other things, Charlie, as you well know, but you have produced a load of evidence suggesting that, well, she was just telling the truth. So, Charlie, thank you very much for all of your work there, and I'm sure I speak for all of our viewers when I say that I'm delighted you're going to be continuing the fight come this 2025. So thank you very much, Charlie. Now, I am still joined by my panel, Aaron Bastani and Benedict Spence. Now, you've heard, Aaron, what Charlie had to say there, and you've seen some of the posts there that we had up. We've got the tweet there from Rupert Lowe. There's also been an intervention from Robert Jenrick, who some have argued is still in leadership campaign mode. Is this just too little too late? Why are politicians only suddenly coming to the fore on this discussion?
No, I don't think it's too little too late. I mean, there have been many...
Well, Corbyn sacked Sarah Champion, a Labour... She was in the shadow cabinet because she raised this issue.
I don't really have any knowledge about that. I don't know...
It was an article in The Sun. She wrote an opinion piece in The Sun, if I can remember correctly.
I mean, I don't... Yeah, but I think, as I understand it, the point... I mean, this is kind of immaterial to what we're talking about here, but I think the point was that she didn't get sign-off as a member of the shadow cabinet to write something in the national press. But whatever, I agree with you that obviously highlighting something like this is not problematic at all. It's a good thing, in fact. It's a very good thing. What I would say is the reason why nothing has happened so far, or little, is that some things have happened, like, for instance, the inquiry you talked about from 2014. The reason why so little has happened is I think so many different authorities and groups failed.
Yes.
If it was just one group, one institution, it's quite easy. But when you've got the police, local authorities, bits of the media, both parties to some extent, and not, it's actually mostly Labour authorities, but it's a bit of a mix, then I think that makes that particularly hard. And then I'll add to that, a lot of this happened, and of course you're right to say it's still happening to some extent, but in Rotherham, a lot of this happened really in a kind of pre-social media age. And I wonder to what extent, if that was unfolding now to that extent, 1,400 children, would that stay as hidden from the national view as it did in the 2000s? I suspect it wouldn't. But because it's also very near to us, unlike, say, child abuse scandals in the Catholic Church in the 80s or the 70s, or in Ireland, 50, 60, 70 years ago, because it's also very, very recent, I think people are justifiably shocked. So hopefully, as you've sort of alluded to, there is some justice for the victims of this stuff. But is that ever going to be enough? Of course not, but it's not too late.
Yeah, well, I don't think it is too late either, and I certainly don't think these people should be getting golden goodbyes when they come to the end of their careers. I mean, Benedict, the fact of the matter is, I said there that I don't even like calling them grooming gangs, because I don't think it's grooming. I think it's
rape.
Systemic rape. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I think we often have, until recently, I think we've had a rather rose-tinted view of what kind of a country the UK is. It's being sort of made very clear to people now what a dire state of affairs we are in, but we have been in a very dire state of affairs for a long time. And actually, fundamentally, we're a country that doesn't like to admit that things go wrong and actively seeks to cover them up. This is the country of Hillsborough. This is the country of infected blood scandals. This is the country of all sorts of things, that we have endless inquiries into all sorts of things that have gone wrong, where there has been complicity by members of the state or indeed private companies as well. And with the instinct is always to cover your own back. I mean, that's why you don't have NHS whistleblowers, because they always go after the whistleblower. They don't go after the actual problem itself. And I think that in some ways, actually, as Aaron says, the sort of the multi-layeredness of this, the fact that it's multiple different agencies and individuals, is part of the reason why it's very difficult. But a lot of the social workers, the police officers, they weren't bad people. They were acting on the instructions that they were given from on high. Now, why is it that we don't actually, therefore, see people being held to account? Well, why would we? We're talking about the political elites in this country. We're talking about the people who make the very laws. What law are you going to prosecute them under? They're not going to prosecute themselves. It's going to be after they're out of power, safely out of the way, that you can begin to do that. Again, Hillsborough being a very good example. You were never going to get justice at the time for something like that. It was going to be so long, in fact, that it was impossible for people to get justice. That, I'm afraid, is the nature of how things work in this country. The legal system in this country is incredibly sluggish, and that's because of chronic underfunding, partly, also done on the watch of the Conservative Party. I'm not surprised that these things take a very long time to happen, and that actually something quite as egregious as this, as the systematic raping of children and the persecution of their parents, can be brushed under the carpet. And also, the other thing that needs to be said, working class communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't have happened if they were middle class communities.
And also, Benedict, it's unfashionable to say it, but white, right? These were white girls, and the reason...
The left behinds.
Yeah, the left behinds, and they were put through that because they were viewed as lesser than because of their skin colour. That, to me, is racism in its purest form. Right, we'll leave that there. Thank you very much, Benedict and Aaron. Coming up, Labour's tax raids on private schools kicks in from this month. But is it backfiring? And should teachers really be teaching children to challenge whiteness? We'll debate that next.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest GB News winter sun forecast, and for some places, Madeira for example, it is going to be relatively warm to end the week. Lots of dry weather around some parts of southern Europe, but a different story across parts of Italy, Croatia into Greece. A little bit of rain pushing its way through here. Mostly dry across central and southern parts of Spain, a little bit wetter further north, and like I said, for Madeira, temperatures on the rise, getting into the low 20s by the end of the week. Elsewhere, temperatures nearer normal for the time of year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Donna Ida, who joins us now. And Donna, you look spectacular in your gorgeous denim jumpsuit.
Thank you.
And accessories. And it's important, isn't it, sometimes, just to keep things simple?
I always keep things simple. I travel a lot, I work long hours, and I don't want to think too much about what I'm wearing. So for me, one and done is perfect. Good accessories, fresh hair, nice makeup, and you can go anywhere, including GB News when you didn't know what was happening.
There we go.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Straight off the plane.
Can we ask you some of our top denim questions?
Yes.
Because Stephen Dixon, the presenter of The Breakfast Show who's just on, said that double denim to him is an absolute no-go.
Oh, what does he
Is that true?
Don't have him on again, darling.
OK. Well, tell him he's fact.
I love double denim.
Really?
I love it. I think it is so cool.
Does it have to be a different tone?
I was going to say double denim, same colour.
Or same
I
tones?
like the... For me, I actually do like the same. Think Saint Laurent 70s. There's an amazing one that we're doing that's going to look great on you in the new season. The Joan Jean, we've got the City Slicker shirt. Oh, it's amazing. If it's done well, it's perfect. And I like it in a paler blue, but a good mid to dark. Very chic.
Yeah, you guys.
No, well, I was just thinking, little old me, not quite sure
You'd look amazing
what to wear
in
this
it.
morning. How
was a
do
bit
guys
stressed.
pull off denim?
For me, if I was dressing you, I would have put you in a pair of jeans this morning with his amazing jumper. Gorgeous watch.
Black, blue?
Black denim I do like. Men don't like it so much. Men like charcoal denim.
Oh, I don't like grey.
Charcoal. I love grey, and the best seller for men is charcoal denim.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Dewbs & Co. with me, Darren Grimes, in for Michelle. Now, I'm continuing to be joined in the studio by my panel, Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Novara Media, and Benedict Spence, the political commentator. Now, today, the government VAT raid on private schools takes effect. Sir Keir Starmer's controversial move to apply 20% VAT to private school fees was designed to boost the state sector, with a tax increase set to fund measures including more teachers. Now, Labour's plan to recruit 6,500 teachers costing £5 billion annually faces criticism, as its VAT policy raises just £1.8 billion. Could it be one of those black hole situations Labour like to wax lyrical about? Critics accuse Labour of using the tax to push ideology, forcing private school students into state sector. It comes as unions demand teachers challenge whiteness in art lessons. I've heard it all now. As part of Labour's plans to diversify the national curriculum. Is this all part of a concerted push to get political ideology into our classrooms? Well, we're going to debate that now. Benedict, come on, you've got to get in on this. I mean, the whiteness issue and the whiteness issue.
The whiteness issue in an art class can be solved by throwing paint at a canvas,
well,
presumably. Yeah, that's a good start. Maybe it's about creativity. I don't know. I mean, honestly, probably people can see a very long way away what my views are on applying VAT to private school fees. I think it's going to be very detrimental. In some ways, I think it might actually be a good thing, because I think it's going to do more to raise the profile of the quality of private education in this country than has happened for a very long time. So I think that it'll be rolled back pretty quickly. The fact that it's not going to raise as much money,
you think so?
It's not going to raise that much money, and it's going
to.
to.
I know that, but the rowing back.
I think it'll highlight actually that we have a very good private school system in this country, and that it benefits a lot of people who are not, in fact, to the manor-born toffs, and that once you sort of funnel all of those people into the state system without the extra resources which this tax isn't going to raise, and it's not going to come from elsewhere, then you will see the quality of education decline simply, again, for logistical purposes. But then on top of that, when you start fiddling with the curriculum, that's not going to actually improve the situation. You know, we saw this with the axing of Latin, was it, for state school pupils? Yeah. You know, actually, you want to be broadening the horizons of state school pupils, not reducing it on the basis that, you know, you happen to think, Bridget Phillipson happens to think that this isn't a worthwhile thing. If anything, actually, we should be encouraging more of these sorts of things, more diverse dead languages, more opportunities for children to learn these things. And I'm sorry, if it's just private schools that offer them, that's not actually the private schools' problem, that's the state's problem. But typical Labour approach is to just take a hammer to the private schools, not to fix the state ones.
And I'm telling you now that in Bridget's part of the world, in Sunderland, they couldn't give a flying flamingo about whether or not some family struggles to send their kid to a private school. They care about actually boosting equality up there, equality of opportunity, I mean, not equality of outcome. And I think, actually, Aaron, what needs to be remembered here is that even in the Soviet states, right, you had wealthier parents who had access to more capital tutoring their children better than you had the average peasant on a farm. I mean, the idea that people don't make the most of what they've got in life, I just find this whole thing to be so out of step with what is the reality of the human condition.
Well, I think if you were Keir Starmer or Labour watching this, Darren, I think they'd be very happy you're repeating the £1.8 billion line, as you said, because I think realistically, it's who knows, but realistically, it's probably going to raise about £1 billion. Now, if you want £1 billion to help fund state education,
they need 5.
£1 billion's a lot better than nothing. No, I know, but we're saying, OK, so 6,000 new teachers, well, if it only pays for 1,500, hey, that's still better than nothing. What I think Labour could have done and should have done, it's what I would have done, is to go with 10% and see how that goes, see what that does with regards to behaviour change, not try to create a panic amongst a very important political constituency that wants you to fail. They've not done that. So for me, what's really interesting here is almost the politics of it. And I know if you've got kids in private school and you're now, seeing your fees go up, you probably don't care about the politics of it. I find that quite interesting because they've done that. They've done the inheritance tax with regards to agricultural land. They've done the winter fuel allowance. It's all at once.
Yeah.
Now, on the one hand, they would say that's because we're front-loading the pain. And
well, exactly. They're getting it out the way.
Yeah, but I think, there comes a point where you've taken that probably a bit too far, and I think they're really testing that hypothesis. So I support, personally, VAT on private schools. Would I have done it at 20% from the off? Absolutely not. I think you've got to be pragmatic. You test the policy, you look at the behavioural change. Maybe you made a mistake, maybe not. I think 10% probably wouldn't have changed that many people.
But the narrative is that it's only toffs that support the abolition of the VAT push for private schools. Well, actually, many of our viewers, me included, didn't go to private schools. I went to a bog standard comprehensive, but I still view this as class warfare.
Well, it does pulp. The majority of the public thinks that the VAT should be paid. What's really interesting, though, is that you don't pay VAT on education anywhere else in Europe. So you've got, the arch Europeans, the Remainers, introducing a policy which doesn't exist in places like France and Germany.
It could be a breach of the ECHR.
The only place that it was introduced in Greece repealed it very quickly because they realised, this doesn't raise the money that we thought it was, and it overloads the system because it doesn't even raise the money to meet the shortfall that we'd prepared for beforehand, let alone when you got more people going back into the system. But again, it's interesting to talk about how, this doesn't actually affect the toffs at all because they won't be affected by it.
No.
It locks out people who are aspirational. Yeah. It also does another thing, which hasn't really been spoken about, which is that it creates a system where actually the only people increasingly in this country who are going to be going to the private schools in this country are not just British people or British toffs, they're international students, because this is actually one of the very few, the fable of soft power that doesn't really exist. It's one of the very few things that we do actually have a sense of soft power, is our boarding schools and our private...
Kids.
Because, exactly, because the world's elite, the dictators, the despots, they send their kids to these private schools.
Aaron, in a word then, are you happy for your child one day to grow up in the classroom learning about whiteness?
I don't know what this means. By the way, it's very important to say it's not one word. That is not... That was
pushed by Labour. It's pushed by...
No, it's not. But no. That is a submission made by, I think, one of the trade unions, the NEU.
We'll see. All right, Aaron Bastani there, co-founder of Novara Media, and Benedict Spence, writer and political commentator. Martin Daubney's up next. Thanks for your company.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Things are looking much colder now across the UK over the next few days. There'll be plenty of sunshine around during the day, but also lots of frost and ice around during the overnight periods. Wintry showers in places too. Low pressure starting to pull away to the east of the UK now. That's allowing a cold northerly airstream to become established, and that's set to dominate the weather across the UK over the next few days. So overnight tonight, the last of the rain clears from the far southeast fairly promptly. Showers ease across the central slice of the UK, but showers continue across the north and northwest in that northwesterly airstream. And wherever you are, it's set to turn very chilly overnight, and widespread frost forming even in towns and cities, with some icy patches certainly across the north of the UK. As for Thursday, well, plenty of sunshine around, certainly across inland areas. Still showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream. So showers continue across the north of Scotland during the first part of Thursday, a mixture of sleet, snow, some hail in places as well. A few showers pushing into Northern Ireland, but across the bulk of southern Scotland, northern England and much of England and Wales. It's set fair, plenty of sunshine, but it will be a very cold start, as I say, with some frost and some ice in places too. As we go through the day, those showers start to feed down from the north and northwest. So many areas exposed to that north to northwesterly airstream will see some showers at times. And wherever you are, despite the sunshine elsewhere, it's going to be a cold day, feeling even colder in that north to northwesterly wind. Temperatures at the very best up to 6 or 7 Celsius down towards the south and southwest. 6 or 7 in the southwest there is in the low 40s in Fahrenheit, but feeling